conditioning. It's like, no, it's actually not standard practice for builders to put AC in homes out here because it's very coastal temperate weather. We hardly ever get super hot summers. Believe it or not, it's actually quite dry. It's not humid here.
Yeah.
So, like, I have no air conditioning. So we were like, just
Wow.
grab a sleeping bag and go sleep in the basement because it was the only cool place in the house. It was crazy. It was like,
Yeah.
42, I think.
Yeah.
Do you live on high
46 in
altitude,
some
or do you
areas.
live in a high altitude, or do you live like sort of like? And we're live, by the way. We're just chit
I
chatting.
don't. I actually live more near the about 45 minutes outside Vancouver, near the U.S. border. Actually,
Oh, okay.
very
All right.
scenic little place called White Rock.
Oh yeah, sure, of course, yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful here.
White Rock, yeah. It's and here we are on the Metal Voice today. Yes, Alan.
Oh, yep. Let me look.
It's your cue,
pretty.
Alan. That's your
My
cue.
gosh,
Who's
we
on the
got-
Metal Voice today, Alan?
We got Lee Aaron herself on our very special show here today.
Hey, how you guys doing?
All
Good.
right.
Good.
Talking
We're in
about
Montreal, by the way.
Yeah.
Very cool city. I love Montreal.
Yep. And the new album, Radio On, and I'm
Radio
showing
On.
it. I'm not sure if anybody could see it, but I'm showing it. Radio On. I'm presenting it, and it's going to be released July 23rd on Metalville Records. Why not July 21st?
Why not my birthday? Yeah, exactly. Why not?
You don't remember this? It was my birthday too.
Do we share a birthday? Oh well, that's why we're so cool. I don't know.
Coolness runs on July 21st. So, new album, Radio One, will be released on the July 23rd on Metalville. And we also have Sean Kelly, a guest, Alan, who's been on this show quite a few times, I think.
Yeah.
Coney Hatch.
Yeah, we just interviewed him with Coney Hatch when they did that live stream. Seems like yesterday. It was probably 8 months ago. So.
Yeah, and the drummer's your husband, correct?
Yes, John Cody is my drummer and my husband and father of our kids, and Dave Reimer is my bass player and also a co-writer in the band and great singer. And Dave's played with Barney Bentall, Bryan Adams. So I am such a lucky girl. I have the most gifted bandmates and they're just wonderful guys. And I love working with them. They're so great.
All right, so
Well, you had me at hello. Okay. And I just want to talk to. I've been listening to the album, and it seems like this album's like really split down the middle. You got your fun songs like Radio On and Vampin' and Great Big Love with that 80s feel, but with maybe a more mature view. And then you've got the introspective stuff like Devil's Gold, Wasted, and Russian Doll. I mean, it's quite the dichotomy. It was quite the lost weekend there. Lots of going on.
The Lost Weekend.
Well, how do I explain? I when I do albums, I like to take the listener on a journey. Some of my favorite albums of all time are, those early Who albums, Fleetwood Mac Rumors. Fleetwood Mac Rumors, you've got everything from like bluegrass to, blues rock to pop. And, stylistically, it shifts around a bit, but it's all the same players and it's all the same singers. So it ultimately sounds like a Fleetwood Mac record. So, I think every record I've ever done, sounds ultimately like a Lee Aaron record because obviously it's my voice and the production values that I like and the style of music that I like to write. But I think that, the challenge as I've become, older and more mature person is, how do I write songs that reflect my worldview now and where I'm at personally and engage my fans. The reality is I think that my fans have grown up with me, so they're between 40 and 60, most of them too. So these are subject matters that they're going to be that are going to reel them in because they're the same things that are on their minds as well.
Cool.
I would like.
You guys locked yourselves in a room for a weekend and you decided we're just going to write songs all weekend and have some fun.
Well, yeah, that was the basic premise. I can tell you that my husband has been in the band 20 years. Dave has been in the band about 17 years. Sean joined the band about 8 years ago. And then we started writing together. And I feel like, on Diamond Baby, we were just really starting to hit a stride artistically together. And what I knew at that point was that when we get together in a room, magic things happen. Magic things happen musically. So this idea of sending files back and forth, even though myself, John, and Dave are West Coast people, we don't all live in the same city. And Sean, of course, is from Toronto. But this idea of, the modern way of writing, sending files back and forth, putting down demos with drum machines or a click track I said, this is crazy. Let's just all bring our like best 3 or 4 ideas and just get together in a room, rehearsal space for the weekend, and just go crazy and just see what we can come up with. And our only agenda really was, let's draw off our the inspirations that we all had when we were teenagers. And all of us have different influences, which I think you're probably hearing on the album. Everybody thinks that the music of their teenagerhood is the best music ever, right? And so I'm like, let's just feel inspired by that, and let's just write some songs that we think. Oh, there you go.
A little cameo.
That just came out on pink vinyl, right?
Did it?
So we just wanted to write songs that we thought, we could get our favorite fans or a bunch of our friends in a room and play, and they would think these songs are really cool. And that was our only motivation, really, for writing these songs, and Radio On was the result.
I'm gonna say something that, for those of you who haven't heard the album because it's not released yet, it's got a little bit of everything, and the guitars are really up front, and I'm not saying it's metal, but I would consider it like a hard rock album, and your voice kind of always works well with that. Would you agree? Disagree?
What works well with that? I'm sorry?
Your voice.
Oh.
Your voice kind of works well with the harder guitars. And I'm not saying it's metal. I'm just saying it's a hard rockin' sound.
Yeah, I wouldn't, I know your show is called The Metal Voice, but it seems like most of the outlets doing this type of stuff are covering everything from, just pure rock and roll to, hardcore metal. And I really don't consider my music metal. It might have little elements of that, but I love loud guitars, but I'm always on.
But just so you know, we don't always interview metal acts.
Okay, good.
That's just kind of like the generic sort of.
Rick Emmett was really worried when he heard that we were going to interview him with a show called The Metal Voice. So.
Oh, he was?
Yeah, but
no, it's like think of it like the Metal Queen. You're not always about metal, but that's the title of the song.
No.
Yeah.
There's no denying it now.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry, cut you off.
No, that's okay.
We do that from time to time. We cut people off, so.
And
we cut each other off.
Here. I got my little Shogun thing going on here.
Go ahead.
So, I don't think my music has really been metal for many, many years. Truthfully, there are other females out there like Doro and Lizzie Hale that I think carry that torch far better than I do. I'm just a fan of all kinds of music, and I'm influenced by different things. And I think that I'm always on the quest for me to write the ultimate great song. And to me, the ultimate great song is something that not only has like the greatest guitar parts and the greatest guitar riff ever, but has a really memorable melody and something that people can latch onto lyrically and melodically and sing along with. If people are tapping their foot, singing along to your music, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Unless you're a super hardcore metal fan and you think that, I'm selling out. So
yeah, well, that was a long time ago. Long time ago.
So.
Yeah.
No, I mean, there's a lot of great tunes you want to be driving down the highway listening to on this album, and also the introspective with great lyrics. There's a lot of great lyrics and lines in a lot of the songs. I really enjoyed it.
I'm a sap for slow songs, and I think the last one was pretty good. The 21, right? Because I guess maybe we're all a little bit older, and we can all sort of relate to that. Just thinking back to 21.
Yeah, when I sat down at the piano to write that song, and I had this concept. Like sometimes it starts that way for me, sometimes not. There's not really a formula, but I did have this concept that I wanted to write a nostalgic song. It was sort of like a love song to my fans that have grown up with me. None of us are 21 anymore, but we all still feel 21, right?
Yeah, I feel 80.
Yeah, and you feel 80? Your body feels that way, but your mind,
Yeah.
So it's about being young at heart. It's about reflecting on, you know, the trials and tribulations that we've all lived through, because at this point in our lives, you know, some of us have lived through relationship breakups, divorce, the death of our parents, our children growing up, or our children still growing up, which is me right now. You know, I've got young teens, and so you know, I wanted that song to just touch people's heartstrings in that way, to make them feel nostalgic and reflective, but also like, you know, survivors, you know?
Well, I was way off base, because the lyrics, you know, 25 years ago about a London Nights, I thought you were writing to the guys in Venom, you know? At the music machine, them mooning you.
Well, you've done your research. Yes, that was one of the most disconcerting moments of my career. It was this crazy, it was called The Music Machine, this show.
I think so. I'm just guessing.
Yeah. And it was in the UK. And what it was that there were, I think there were 3 or 4 rotating stages. So, you know, you'd go on and you'd play one song, and the audience would all of like 1,000 people would run over here, and then they'd do another intro, and the whole thing would pivot, and the audience would run to the next stage. And so we had watched Venom play a tune or two, and another band. I can't remember who was always on the bill at that time. I think it was another more pop band. And then, you know, even back then, those guys didn't think I was real metal, right? So they're like, how can we get Lee Aaron? So here I am, I'm, you know, trying to play, you know, my tune, we're playing live, and these guys are like full on, like ripping their shorts down in front of us. We're going, you know, they're
all 3 of them? All 3 of them?
Totally, well, a couple of them, they were totally trying to throw us off our game.
Okay, what year was that?
85?
Okay.
I'm guessing.
What year was it close to? How's that? Okay, 85. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
That's what we're going to go with.
You know what? Here's another great story. I didn't even know this, and I didn't even realize on Scorpion Savage Amusement, and I'm not trying to change subjects, but I am. You sang back vocals. I didn't even know that. I didn't even remember that. And here I am, the huge Scorpions fan. And was it the whole album, or was it, and I just saw that on your live chat, by the way. That's where it came from. So if you want to plug that too, go right ahead.
Yeah, well, I believe it was 1987. Again, and I just talked about this on my Instagram a couple of days ago, but
yes, that's where I saw it.
The record label, I was signed on Virgin out of Germany, but it was A&R'd by a label called 10 Records was a division of Virgin out of England. And they were trying to get some stuff for a live record, and they had employed Dieter Dirks, a mobile recording studio, to come out and record some of our shows on our German tour that year. And the Scorpions, in the meantime, were in the middle of recording the Savage Amusement album with Dieter, and who was their longtime producer. And they had tried to find somebody who could hit this super high harmony on the song Rhythm of Love. Mm-hmm. And I mean, if you listen closely, people say you can actually really hear my voice in there. So
I'm going to listen to it right after.
We're going to have to do this
right after. We're going to have to do the reaction video to it. Go ahead.
And and I guess, you know, Udo from Accepted came in and tried it. Don Dokken, they'd had a few guys come in, and they just didn't have that register to sing up there clearly. And Dieter went back to the band. He said, hey, I'm recording this girl right now, and she's from Canada, and she's got this really great rock and roll voice, and we should consider bringing her down to the studio to sing on the song. So I went down there, and it was just the funnest day, because those guys had already come out a few times to see me play in Germany at that time. They, I guess, were pseudo fans. I know Rudy came out at one point in time, and we were hanging out backstage, and it was right around the time. Do you remember Klaus Meine in the late 80s got vocal nodules, and he had to
like a dog collar.
Right, yeah, before Black.
That's right.
Yeah.
And Rudy gave me this huge lecture backstage about, like, you're not going to be able to continue to sing this way. You've got to really take care of your voice. And he walked me through doing vocal warm-ups and, you know.
Rudy Schenker here, right? Rudy Schenker.
Yeah. Things like
so he's doing vocal warm-ups?
He was explaining to me what Klaus.
You got to do this. What are you doing? Is that what he's saying?
I feel bad. I don't want to imitate him. But yeah, he's like, Yeah, Lee, your voice is fantastic, great.
That's good. That's really good. That's
You must
good.
yeah. And I'm like, oh, I love this.
But don't
song,
talk
you
to
know?
me about my brother.
You know, so-
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, so he showed me some, he said like Klaus was doing these vocal warm-ups now and stuff. And it really, you know, I have gotten some great advice from rock stars over the years. And that was certainly one of those wonderful times. And the other joke is they joked around for years after that, because I guess when I was in the studio recording the vocal track, I had these high-heeled boots on and they had marble floors in the studio. And when I was trying to hit that note, I was stomping my foot on the floor over and over again. And they said that I actually chipped the marble underneath where the microphone was. So anyway, they said it was like a rock and roll memento that cracked marble was from Lee Aaron stomping her boot on the floor. So
You know, it's very cool. Very cool. Very cool. I know you said this story, but I thought people who didn't hear it, it'd be cool.
So if I remember, this was recorded at Afterlife Studio, which was formerly known as Mushroom Studio, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's where Heart made their first albums, if I remember correctly.
yes,
Yeah.
it changed
So-
quite a bit since then, but yes, it is still the same studio.
So, you know, we got Marta Gabriel from Crystal Viper. She just released an album called Metal Queens of covers, and I guess it's an homage to you. I mean, I know one of the songs on there is Metal Queen, and you had mentioned Lizzie Hale. So, you know, the generation that's coming up now, you know, you spoke about yourself in Doro back in the 80s. Do you think they have an easier time than maybe you guys did back then? Like you said, I mean, the Hearts, the Wilson sisters were saying, you know, are you really playing your guitar? You know, that's what they lived through back in the day. So I was just wondering if you think the next generation's having a little bit of an easier time than what you guys went through.
I think definitely so. I mean, does some sexism still exist in the industry? Of course it does. Does it still exist within the genre of hard rock more so? I would say a little bit, yes. You know, and again, I don't want to be negative here, but sometimes when things get picked up and reposted places, the whole world of social media, it's kind of a place, it's a forum where people can post comments without filters. And so to this day, even like I have read comments about myself, criticisms, people, I've been called a MILF, I've been called like things that honestly, it's just not acceptable anymore, but it still does tend to happen. That said, I do think it's better. I think that, you know, when it comes to the 80s, you know, I came up even after, you know, obviously the Wilson sisters. So Wilson sisters made me want to become a girl rocker. Joan Jett and the Runaways wanted me, you know, influenced me to become a girl rocker. Susie Quattro. And we were all fighting against...
Leather Tuscadero, I like to call her.
Yes.
If anybody remembers
That's
that,
what-
going back to
that's how
Happy
we
Days.
knew her, exactly.
Leather Tuscadero.
So we were
Go
all,
ahead. Sorry, I like to cut people off. That's
That's okay.
just my thing.
So, yes, I...
Comic relief.
Yeah, you know, so, you know, there were, you know, women were kind of relegated to certain categories in the 80s. It was sort of like you were like a groupie. You were, you know, the girlfriend of the guy in the band. Yeah. You were the girl, the beautiful model in the video that was making the male rock stars look more masculine. And so there weren't very many of us who were actually rocking out and picking up guitars and doing our own thing. And there was a lot of questioning, you know, who wrote the songs for them and who's the man behind the curtain that's making it all happen for them. And it used to make me so mad. I used to go like, I write my songs. I'm involved in the production of my records. I'm the woman behind the curtain. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And, but I think that, you know, that opened a lot of doors for women to pick up guitars in the 90s and write angry songs and be taken seriously. And so I think that's definitely translated over into the field of hard rock. And I think that there is, it's a lot easier for women to be, you know, respected for their art and their craft these days. Although it's not that often that you see female hard rock bands headlining festivals, though I think we're still underrepresented in that way. So there you go. You got my 2 cents worth.
No, it's a good answer. It's a great answer. I mean, look, we're old enough to see the evolution, right? I mean, Heart was like, wow, they play, oh my God. Anne and Nancy Wilson's playing guitar. Like, what? She can't play guitar like that. That was crazy. Like, to see her play Barracuda, and it's just what? It's just they were the first, and they're from Vancouver too. But even though they were really originally from the U.S.,
then you had bands like Vixen that weren't, they're opening for all these big bands, and they're like, you're groupies, you're not getting into the venue. No, we're the opening act.
Yeah.
Things have changed. Things have changed so much. All right, so let's see what else we got here. We got a lot of questions.
Sean Kelly's been with you, what you said, like a dozen years now. So, he's a great guy. We got to interview him recently. What about compare him and your relationship with him maybe to John Albini from the early 80s, in the 80s? How did the two compare in working with you?
Well, that's no one's ever actually asked me that question. And
there you go. That's why you're on the show.
I don't like to compare talent or human beings. I will tell you this, that John made a decision in the mid 90s to leave the band. His father was a well-known hockey player, and his dad always said, know when to quit. And I don't know if that stuck with him as sort of a legacy saying or something, but he wanted to get more involved in production. So he moved to Nashville and he opened up a studio that he still runs and is quite successful at. We've had a lot of conversations actually just recently. And he's a great guy, great talent. I loved working with him in the 80s and early 90s. Back then we didn't have families, right? We were just able to be totally self-absorbed. I would go over to John's project studio every single day when we weren't touring, and we would work on songs. Sometimes we would fight like brother and sister over things because we were younger and more immature and, had differing ideas about things. It's a different working relationship with Sean because obviously we're older. Sean's a family man. I have my own family. I think that we've grown up a lot. We treat each other with a different kind of modicum of sensitivity and respect. But I can tell you that I looked for a long time to find a person that could replace John as a permanent member of my band, because he was not easy to replace. He was pretty irreplaceable. He was a formidable talent and just a great guy, again, like a brother. And when Sean joined the band, let me explain how that happened, is Sean was writing Metal on Ice, the book.
Oh, yes.
The book that's right. Yes.
Elevates all those wonderful Canadian rock and roll bands from the 80s that have kind of been written out of Canadian rock and roll history books, right?
Kick-Axe.
Yeah, so we met that way. We got on like a house on fire as people. And Sean had mentioned, he said, hey, if you ever, had a different guitar player at the time in Vancouver player, lovely guy, but he said, if you ever need somebody to sub for you, if they can't make it, and I'm in Toronto, if you ever got a gig here, I'd love to do it. It just turned out a couple months later, my guitarist, because he had a bunch of other projects going on, couldn't make it. And I called up Sean. I said, hey, if you want to learn my set, the gig is yours. And he was
careful what you ask for.
He was so excited to do it. And I was, and I just loved Sean's excitement and his enthusiasm just for life.
He's a good guy.
He's just so positive. And
yeah, that's the word.
Yeah, so we ended up in Toronto. We get into a rehearsal space the night before the show, and I'm like, okay, we're gonna go for it here. And literally halfway through the first song, Sean has a swagger and a feel and a vibe to his playing that is unlike so many guitar players I've ever played with. It just became so obvious to us. Halfway through the first song, we're like, dude, you have to join our band. I mean, it's just not an option at this point.
Halfway through the first song.
Yeah, and he's like, okay, and basically that was it. He joined the band that night, and it wasn't long thereafter that we started writing some songs together, started creating together. And I don't know, we haven't looked back. It's been a really successful partnership.
That's very cool. Here's some questions. I could take a couple of questions. People are typing stuff.
Okay.
The first question, is this actually live? I go, yes, it's live. It's live.
It's live.
That's an easy answer.
All right. When are you going to tour the United States? That's art. Will you ever tour the US?
I would love to have a more solid answer for that question. It's really about demand, right? Unfortunately, one of the detriments that plagued my career back in the 80s, and again, it's not a criticism. It was the record contract I signed back in 1983 with Attic Records, but they owned my worldwide rights to basically license me in other territories. And for one reason or another, and again, I could go into a lot more detail on this. I in fact, recently had a Facebook conversation with Al Mayer, who was the former head of my label, about this. And he explained to me in more detail why that never happened. A lot of hands were tied financially and politically. I never ended up with a full-on American release. Not because my albums weren't good enough or because people weren't interested. It had to do with the other big licensing agreements. Like I was on Virgin in Europe and various other territories. And so when it came down to dividing up that piece of pie with, I believe it was Atlantic out of New York that wanted to sign me at the time, the lawyers advised them that, by the time we slice it all up, this artist would be getting 4% of the pie, and all of everything would need to get recouped out of her end, and it would just be impossible. And so there's political reasons why that never happened. And as a result, it's only been my last few records that have had real releases in the US, but releases in the US are, there you go, virtual now, right?
Yeah, that's right.
It's everywhere. So yeah, if there's interest from a big festival or something, we would love to get to the States to play. And it's definitely on my manager's agenda to try to get us down there.
Okay, well here's the follow-up question to that.
Sure.
And I'm sure people have talked about this. You get like Lita Ford, you get Doro, and you get yourself, and sort of like the three. Alan, what are we going to call it? We're going to call the three
divas.
The three. Well, no, that's been done. That's been done. Divas not. I don't know about divas. The three. If I say metal queens, it's just. It's the three something. The three ladies of rock. Something like that.
Okay.
Something like that. It's got to be a little more sizzle than the ladies of rock. I don't know. Women of rock. But what do you think about that idea? Has it ever been discussed?
Oh, you mean a triple bill?
Like a triple bill, like Lita Ford.
It goes back to what you were saying earlier. There's no females headlining festivals, and
Queens of Rock. That's what Patrick Kelly said. Queens of Rock. I like that.
Yeah. Again, that is, as much as I'd love to see that happen, it's really about a promoter grabbing onto that idea and deciding to put it together and taking the risk, right? I've done things across Canada. I've done shows with Headpins in Toronto. I've done things with Sass Jordan. I've done, in fact, here's an interesting story. I did do a show with Lita Ford a couple of years ago. We played a big showroom in Winnipeg together, and it was probably one of my best shows ever.
See, throw in Doro and you got yourself a show.
Well, Lita,
no, I understand the business perspective. Don't worry. We're just tossing it out there, right?
Yeah. So I ended up, Lita was excited to work with me, and I was excited to work with her because it was actually the very first time in all of these years we'd ever shared a stage. And of course, she knew of me and I knew of her because obviously, in the 80s and early 90s, we would often be gracing the cover of, these rock magazines together. There was her, there was me, So she invited me to come on stage and sing a song. So we decided we were going to do Cherry Bomb together.
Oh, there you go.
So there's a live footage of that out there on YouTube if you want to go Google it. I thought I'd be real cool and I would, get huge credibility with my young teenage children by showing them me singing the song from Guardians of the Galaxy. Because that's how they know it, right?
That's how they know it, exactly.
Singing with
Shrek. Shrek 2, I think. It was in Shrek also. No, that was the other Runaway song. was that
So
joke?
I'm thinking I'm gonna get huge credit. I'm like, come on, you're gonna see this, and I play like the first 30 seconds, and you realize how ultimately uncool you are when you finally have young teenagers, because my son watched like 30 seconds. He's like, oh mom,
You're embarrassing me.
he said that's just cringy.
Oh,
I'm like, okay. I give up.
Me and Alan know that.
Well,
Jimmy,
wait,
weren't you in a movie from the 70s when you were a kid? That's what somebody asked me. No, I wasn't. Sorry.
No.
I was in that De Niro pick. Okay.
well,
so
I caught you here at the Montreal Jazz Festival. I think it was you were promoting this album at the time.
Yeah.
It seems like forever now. It probably only about 3 or 4 years ago. And then that was your warm up to trying to going over to Europe and playing some festivals there. So how did those festivals go over there at that time?
Well, they went extremely well. We did a string of shows, and one of them was Bang Your Head Festival, which was a huge festival in front of like 50,000 people. And then we did a few more intimate shows when we were over there as well. And we ended up with a couple of them filmed live, and we ended up being able to put together the first live CD DVD set that I had put out since Live in London years ago, and that came out in 2019. So it's called Lee Aaron, Power Soul Rock and Roll Live in Germany, and that's also available right now, and it's a complete live concert. It's really cool, put together by Frank Reiner, who is well known for his work with Alice Cooper and Def Leppard and Rob Zombie, and super talented guy. He also did all of the videos for the Radio On album, which just is...
Well, here's a great question. Richard says, have your kids ever seen the music video for Metal Queen? And if so, how do they react their mom running around in animal skins and a sword? Do they like? I'm sure my kids would. So what's the reaction? Give us the reaction. Mom, oh mom. No, or they're like, oh mom, that's cool. You know, what's...
You rock, Mom.
There's this thing. I mean, my son has seen Thor and all of those, Ragnarok, all those movies, right? And so, the era in which that video was made, all of that like crazy, hand painted stupid laser beam that comes into the video.
Yes. It's cool. I like it. It's cool.
But I mean, there's this thing called CGI now, so that just looks so antiquated. So I remember when he was, 4 or 5, he came home and he said, Mom, there's a kid at my school, and he said that his mom showed him a video of you and there was like a big robot thingy, and I was trying to figure out what video was he talking about. He must be talking about Metal Queen with the big gigantic metal spider thing, drum riser. And so he lasted like 30 seconds, and it was just nothing compared to the new superhero films out there. So can't compete, unfortunately.
But they think you're cool, right? Your kids think you're cool, like you're a celebrity, right? So they must think there's a cool factor there. They're just not saying it. They're keeping it secret.
It's an interesting dynamic, because when you've grown up in this family with your kids, you're like the lady that makes craft dinner, right? You're like,
Yeah.
So I think that they're sort of seeing a little bit now that maybe mom and dad are pretty cool, but they certainly don't want to admit it.
Yeah. I noticed that about my kids and Alan's. So they don't want to admit how cool we are.
Or maybe we're delusional. I think we're deluding ourselves, but
Yes.
So, just 21, that's one of I think both Jimmy and I's favorite song off the album.
Yeah,
and I just got a 2-part question here. What advice would you give Lee Aaron, a 21-year-old Lee Aaron, if you were able to speak to her today? And the follow-up question, what advice would you give Karen Greening at 21 years old?
Well, the advice, that's a good question. The advice I would give to my personal and professional self really would be to trust your instincts and trust your gut. If something, the thing about having a super long career and the good thing and the upside and the downside is, the upside is I'm tenacious and I'm here and I'm still at it. The downside is that I did a lot of my growing up in the public eye, and it was filmed and it's all out there. And so I went through some really awkward years of stumbling through sexualized marketing and all that stuff in the, between like 17 and 21 years old. And that girl, I would say, don't do anything you don't feel comfortable with, and don't feel pressured, because I just didn't really understand at that age and stage that I could say no to the powers that be, when I wasn't comfortable with something. And I totally understand now that, yeah, I can totally set boundaries and do things like that. But it took me a while to learn those things.
It's interesting. Even if you explain that to your daughter, or I'm not sure if you have a daughter, but if you explain it to your daughter, she still wouldn't register, until they went through that experience themselves. That's just 20 years old, right? It's just,
well, and I expect them fully to make their own mistakes, but I didn't have a mom that had any clue about the music industry or the rock and roll world, and that wasn't her fault, right? But my daughter does have a mom that does know, because I've made those mistakes, so I can say to her, just so you know, those shorts are a little bit short, and when you wear something like that, think of the message that you're sending to the world, right? Because everything we do and everything we say is a reflection of our character and the message that we're sending to the world. And, it takes you years sometimes to learn that, but you do. And this is why people, and I lecture my kids too about social media, because, don't think that it, like, once my son posted, I think something that had, and I don't even want to say the word, it wasn't a bad word, but it was a body part word. And he didn't realize.
Does it rhyme with Venus?
It rhymes with Venus. And he was making a joke with his friends. He's 15. I don't think that he realized, like, he wasn't meant to be malicious, or even, it was just a joke between his buddies. I said, don't ever post anything like that. Don't ever post anything that a boss that might hire you in the future can go back and look at your Facebook feed or look at your Instagram and go, ooh,
yeah, that's right.
That kid said that thing when he was 15. I said, so they do have parents that are very aware of that world. And, so yeah, there you go.
You're a good mom. It sounds like you're a good mom. That's good. Alan, Bob Ezrin, Lee, tell us about working with the famous, Pink Floyd, Alice Cooper, Kiss, working with Bob Ezrin. What was it like?
Well, I was crapping my pants, really.
Really? Well, yeah, it's a big name. Like, and just so everybody knows, he's Canadian.
Right. So I was so intimidated by him initially, because he was like this production god, right?
Yeah.
I was 22 years old and I was recording at Phase One Studios in Toronto, and he was next door in like studio. I think we were in Studio B, he was in Studio A, and he was doing some big project with Motley Crue and Lita Ford and Ozzy Osbourne and all these big monstrous acts. Like he was mixing it or something, and but he kept popping his head into our studio. We were recording with Paul Gross, who had recorded Metal Queen with us. And then he kept popping his head in and was very curious about me and my voice and, who I was and what I was doing. He was very intrigued. And then Paul had a racquetball accident and couldn't see out of one eye, and he had to take a sabbatical from working on the album. But we had a deadline and we had to get the album done because we had a European tour booked. And Bob went into the label and he said, I want to finish this production. So that's how we ended up working with him. Bob inserted himself into our project, which was very flattering. And he brought up Dick Wagner, whom he worked with Alice Cooper.
Right. Another great producer.
Great. Yeah. And Dick was amazing. We got to work with Dick, and he was, he worked with us on some of the arrangements and, wrote a couple of the tunes with us. And worked them into shape. And so that was a real great experience getting to work with him. It was still the 80s. It was still a bit of a crazy time. I know at one point in time, and I've told the story a couple of times, Bob and Dick were, they were woodshedding together, and they locked me and John Albany out of the control room, and they were working on a mix for Barely Holding On, which was the big European single that came out. And John and I are like twiddling our thumbs, drinking coffee in the, back in the lounge, wondering what the heck are they doing in there? Why won't they let us back in? And anyway, I don't know what to say, what exactly went on in that control room, but they brought us back in. Bob had my voice up really loud with a bunch of reverb and just a click track for the opening of the song. And John and I were like scratching our heads going, what have you guys been doing in here for like 3 hours? Needless to say, that ended up not being the intro of the tune, but it was interesting to watch his process. And he, again, Bob was one of the guys that actually personally showed me some vocal warm-up exercises on how to get my voice in shape. And I learned a lot from working with him.
He was quite the disciplinarian. Is that what the word is? He was, at least from what the KISS guys say, right? He was very sort of strict and...
Just don't call him a functioning addict. Okay? Do not call him that. We found that out this week.
And who was talking about that?
That was Paul Stanley. Paul Stanley was saying that.
KISS about, biography.
Yeah.
He misspoke. He misspoke.
But he misspoke.
Yeah.
Alan.
Well, I'm trying not to misspeak, but yes.
Well, you know, I got to give you credit.
The illustrious 80s and there was definitely some shenanigans.
Peruvian flavor to that recording.
Yeah.
Okay. Alan, show the Metal Queen. Is this a curse or a blessing? Like, everybody keeps saying Metal Queen, Metal Queen. Is this, and I know you've answered this question 1,000 times, but in your mind, like when you look back, is that a curse or a blessing?
That's a good question.
Because it doesn't let you go further, but at the same time, it gives you those great gigs, right?
I got the old and I got the new.
Yeah, oh my, you've got your...
you got a collection. We're serious collectors here.
Arsenal of Lear and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's a great question.
And actually, there's a follow-up question. What did it feel like when you were dressed up and they were doing that photo shoot? What was going through your head? But go ahead. Did you think, oh my God, what am I doing? Or this is so cool? Or like, what were your thoughts?
I was kind of going, I didn't pick this outfit. And,
what outfit did you want to wear?
Outfit was not my idea.
Where did all these guys come from all of a sudden?
It was a male art director. And
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I have to say that the whole image was somewhat crafted for me. Yeah. And it was very much designed to reach 14-year-old boys. And obviously it did, because here you are.
You're making us blush.
So what can I say about that? I'd say a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
For those that don't ever want to see me be able to do anything or be labeled as anything but metal, it's a curse. I got angry for a few years. I didn't want to play the song live because I was like, I need to be allowed artistically to be able to expand beyond this little pigeonholed box that you guys have put me in. So artistically, I found it very constricting. And that is why I'm like, screw everybody. I'm going to sing jazz and blues for a while, which, by the way, are the roots of hard rock and rock and roll. For those of you that need to do a little bit of a history lesson here, but so yeah. And I did an opera. I continue to do things that artistically where I can step outside the box. I recently, Sean Kelly and I worked together on this. He was, I think, music directing a project for Canadian Brass. And he said, do you want to sing on this album? And it's all brass instruments doing popular songs. He said, do you want to sing Gordon Lightfoot, Neil Young, or The Weeknd? I'm like, oh, I'm so down with Blinding Lights. I'm doing a Weeknd song with Canadian Brass, because what could be further from being the Metal Queen than doing something like that? I just worked with a Toronto artist named James B. I don't know if you know him. The Look People. Very, very different alternative scene. He's working on an album called Secret Agents. I just sang a version of Goldfinger,
Oh, Goldfinger, I love it, yeah.
My own rock and roll version of that. And so I'm very, very excited. But again, like, I don't know that they're, going to be really successful. But artistically, I love taking these diversions. I love to step away from that whole metal queen image thing.
But you know, maybe it opened all the doors so you can do all this. You know, there's always different ways to look at it. Like Metal Queen opened all those doors and all the eyes and all the ears. And as it constricted you, it sort of opened a whole.
You know, in the blessing part of it, let me tell you, is that people are now coming full circle because, you know, I think I mentioned a few times in the past that, you know, I stumbled through some awkward marketing years. And when I wrote Metal Queen, you know, it was released when I was 22 years old. I wrote it when I was 21. You know, it was me pushing back against that stuff. It was me being inspired by that. I was inspired by that heavy metal video, you know, the woman who takes control and is, you know, pushing back against all of that sexualization. And people now, I think, see the song for what, like lyrically, it's a feminist statement. It's a song of empowerment. It's about, you know, being able to be the woman in charge, you know? And so I get asked a lot about that now. And I think that, you know, so that I think is a blessing. The fact that message is now getting across, and the fact that, you know, the term Metal Queen has become the queen, the moniker that labels all of the great women of rock, you know, and
it's true.
That's something. So,
and you wrote that song, you know, you started I don't know if I call it a statement, a movement. Yes, a movement. I like that. The Metal Queen movement. I like that. And I mean, I'm waiting for the Lita Ford, Doro Pesch, Lee Aaron tour. That's next on my agenda.
But going back to even Body Talk, you know, on this album too, you got those coquettish lyrics, you know, you're kind of teasing. There's always some great lines. I like pushing, I think, is one of the terms. And it, you know, that's what we come to expect from Lee Aaron, you know, and it's nice to see that you're still incorporating that in some of your music today. So.
Yeah, well, there's, I haven't lost my sassy attitude.
No, it doesn't appear so, no.
It's ingrained, you know, and I think it's just from years of being a fighter and not losing your sense of humor, you know?
Yeah. So. And just from today, I'm going back to the album now, Radio On, you know, the first song, Vampin', I thought it was like an Ace Frehley solo. Like, you know, Sean Kelly, I don't know if you hear it, maybe Jimmy Page, Ace Frehley around there, but you know, that's a nice hard rockin' tune. I really enjoyed this album. It's very versatile. It's a hard rock album. It's not a Metal Queen album, but it, you know, really showcases your voice really well. The producer, and this is what I was getting to, the producer is, what's his name, from AC/DC there, the mixer, right?
Oh, it's Lee produced it.
Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, no, you produced it, but he mixed it, right?
Mike Frazier.
Mike Frazier, that's the name I was thinking of. Mike Frazier, and, you know, who just did the recent AC/DC album. It sounds great, the album. It sounds, and a lot of people don't know this about you, and they should know that you write your own songs, you play guitar, and you play piano, right? You sing, we know that, it's obvious. And you're a producer and a songwriter, so you just sort of got the whole sort of everything. You're wearing all the hats. That's pretty amazing.
It's evolved into that, right?
Yeah.
And listen, I have to preface this by I'm the first person to say I'm a hack on guitar. I know enough to write a song, but I'm no Sean Kelly. Let me tell you.
Yeah, well,
that's why I hire. He's the maestro, right?
Yeah, sure.
You know, but yeah, you know, it's evolved into that over the years, and I guess it's been a gradual evolution into all those roles for me after just having moments of being dissatisfied in my life. That's what I'm trying to say, with, you know, maybe the end result on, you always go back and you reflect on these things. You go, yeah, you know, like some girls do, like, I like that album and I like some of the songs, but I didn't like all the songs. And I really didn't like the mixes in the end. And even though that album was platinum and it was successful, you know, and so it's really just been an evolution into learning all those crafts over the years. And also necessity, you know, when the whole music industry for hard rock fell apart in the 90s with the advent of grunge. I'm sure many of the artists you've interviewed have talked about this. Unfortunately, like I thought, wow, I was so excited. I loved grunge music. This is going to be a new direction. I can take my own brand of rock. And it's like, I made Emotional Rain. I made the Too Precious record, and I couldn't get arrested. Nobody wanted to hear about it. They were like, nope, sorry. The media went, you are part of the old school. This is the new school. Doesn't really matter.
Oh, we've heard that. We hear that. We hear that from everyone. Oh yeah, we hear it from everyone.
I have many fans tell me that Emotional Rain is their favorite record, and it was not a big commercial success. I thought I wrote some of my greatest songs at that point in time, but when that happened in 1996, basically things fell apart. For the labels, they fell apart. For the labels that were promoting that kind of music, for management teams, my manager took a job working with Koch America as their foreign licensing rep. And all of a sudden I showed up in 1996 in my new home in Vancouver, and a bunch of banker boxes on my doorstep, and I was in $483,000 worth of debt. Oh. Because we had spent so much money making those records, and they didn't reach the pinnacle of success that my former albums had. I had to go bankrupt. So a lot of these skills were developed out of necessity. It was like, I ended up, when I rose from the phoenix from the ashes, got myself back on my feet a little bit financially, I bought Pro Tools and I got started a small home studio, and I started to learn how to record myself because I couldn't afford to go back into a big studio anymore and do this. So really a lot of these skills have developed out of necessity, but I'm so glad I have them now because I really like the records I'm making, and I love the people I'm working with. And I feel like, I know a lot of artists say this, but I feel like I'm doing some of my best work right now.
Isn't it amazing? Isn't it amazing?
And I'm so
you and so many others. You and so many others. Who would have thought, right? Late in the game. I'm not saying we're old, but I'm just saying later in the game, artists are making their best music of their lives. It's like a painting. I think, Aaron, Lee, it's like a painting. You just get better as an artist to like, I remember Elvis was washed up at 20, At least they said he was washed up. But the reality is art is a craft that you can develop over time and you get better at it.
Well, you two fellow Canucks, like Neil Young and Joni Mitchell, they're the perfect example of that, right? I mean, the painting and music, and well into their late 70s. So
Yeah. Well, Neil Young, it astounds me. He's amazing, and of course I love Joni as well. But yeah.
All right, a few last questions here. Your favorite tour, like a big band that you toured with that you said, "Wow, that was a great tour."
My favorite tour.
Your favorite tour, maybe you supported or somebody supported you, and you sort of went on. Okay, you went with Bon Jovi, but was there anybody else that you said, "Wow, that was a great tour. I loved it"?
I mean, I've had that's a hard question to answer because I've done some really, really great shows. And a lot of the times when I've toured, it also hasn't just been one particular band that I toured with. I love touring with Kim Mitchell. There's a Canadian band.
Sure, I bet. Yeah.
I toured with Kim Mitchell in the, I think, early 90s maybe. And great guys, great artist. And here's an interesting story. Kim Mitchell, Max Webster, that band did a series of high school shows when I was in high school. And so, no word of a lie, the first real rock concert I ever saw, Max Webster played my high school. And I was like,
crazy.
Seeing, and here was this guy with like crazy long hair and a crop top and nylons and high heel shoes playing. And I was just like, fly your freak fat flag, baby. Like,
yeah.
Did you ever see Rush in the olden days? Rush in Toronto in the olden days at the gas works. And did you ever see Rush?
I wasn't old enough.
No.
I was like when I was like, but I've got to tell you, when Fly By Night came on my little transistor radio when I was like 11 or 12 and I was riding to the park, I almost fell off my bike because I was just like, who's this band? Who's this amazing band? I think I'm like, I think I'm like one of like two girl prog fans out there.
Triumph? I mean, okay, Rick Emmett produced your first album, but did you see Triumph in the early days?
I did not, but I got
really?
I didn't.
It's okay. It's all
Right in your
right.
backyard.
You're not disappointing us. It's okay.
When I was, I think I was,
What part of Toronto did you grow up in?
I grew up in the Brampton area, which is a
Okay, all
suburb
right.
of Toronto.
Yeah.
And the first, the only real rock concerts I saw were like Gatto played an all ages show at Hot Rocks in Brampton, and I went there. Kim Mitchell played my high school. Then I played a few concerts. I played a concert at the band shell locally when I was with my high school band when I was 17, picked up on my first manager, and I ended up on the road. The first real big rock show, big rock concert I ever saw, I think I was 20 years old, and my boyfriend at the time took me to see Black Sabbath with Ronnie Dio at Maple Leaf Gardens.
Oh, very cool.
That was
Very
the first real big rock show I went and saw. So I was just sort of doing
Mine was Loverboy. And Bryan Adams opened up.
I saw Bryan Adams play Rock and Roll Heaven.
Oh.
And I think,
Well, if we're going to do this, mine was
Yours
April
what?
Wine, Nature of the Beast tour with Loverboy opening their first tour.
Oh, look at that, Alan. I like that.
So
That
this
was
is
a
the
Montreal
Canadian
Forum.
show here today.
Canadiana here, hey? Yeah.
Montreal Forum. But Bryan Adams was this young punk, and he was opening up for Loverboy. So that's cool.
I must have saw him around the same time playing at Rock and Roll Heaven, like this far away. It was pretty cool.
I was
What
14.
about your voice, Lee? Like obviously Rudy's suggestions paid off because you still got a fantastic voice.
Do the Rudy thing. Do the Rudy thing. Do the Rudy thing. The accent. Do it.
Your voice is fantastic, great.
Say something, my brother. There's him and his brother are like knocking heads. But
I know.
whatever.
What would you
You
say
don't
the
have to
difference would be? The difference would be between your voice today and maybe back then.
Well, okay, that's a great question because nobody really asks me that. People say, "Oh, you still sound great," but
But pause for a sec. I heard your first album today, and I go, there is a difference. But go ahead.
because I
Okay,
was
let her
screaming.
answer the question.
No, it's more. There's as a voice ages, it gets more rich. There's like a darker tone to it, and it's good. But go ahead.
Well,
I don't want to answer the question for you.
You just did.
It's sort of like you don't go to the gym and lift 300 pounds over your head without working up to it, right? So
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
You're
Go
like
ahead.
muscles that develop obviously over time. The difference, I think, I can still sing as high as I used to sing, but I've realized over time that I don't have to be screaming on 10 all the time, that I've developed a lot more nuance and subtlety with my voice and the way I use it as my instrument, right? I don't want to be screaming on 10 all the time. There can be a lot of power in holding back. I think that's what I've learned.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I noticed you sounded like you could tell that was like a young lady singing versus today more of a mature voice. And again, it's a more of a rich voice. Anyways, let's plug your album once again. Unless there's something else you want to tell everybody. What do you want? You want to plug anything other than your album?
Well, we have the album dropping on July 23rd.
Yes.
There's some pre-sale links if you go to my website or if you link in to the bio on Facebook and or my Instagram. There are some buy links. Right now we have a problem with, unfortunately, the CDs being sold out at Amazon, and we're trying to get Amazon to switch it, but the vinyl is available, amazon.ca, but there's a whole bunch of other retailers that are carrying it right now. Excited about that. The videos are out on YouTube, and you can also link to them through my website or my socials. Vampin' was the latest single, 21, Come On. And other than that, it looks like shows are going to start to open up. I've just booked a show in October. If all things go
Where?
well.
What part of the world?
Calgary.
Calgary. Well, it's okay. Calgary's good.
So I don't know how I'm sure there's going to be some safety protocols. I'm not quite sure. It's an indoor show at the Chrome Showroom. I played there.
Bring your
before.
masks.
Yes.
I always got my mask handy. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
So keep your eyes posted for more shows to be announced. And the other little secret thing I'm going to tell you is that our Christmas album that came out independently last year. Oh, that's another thing we did during COVID because we were bored. We said, let's make a Christmas record.
Okay.
We wrote 2 new songs in February for it. it's been picked up again by Metalville. It's coming out this Christmas globally with 2 new tracks and a new cover. So
That's cool.
exciting as well.
Christmas albums always tend to do well. Like those 2 months there, they repeat, and every year people just keep buying them. So it's a good idea. It's always a good idea.
And it's not a typical Christmas record. It's not just us rehashing Silent Night in all the Christmas standards. It's there's a couple of standards on there, but it's a bunch of really cool Christmas rock and roll songs that I went and spent a last weekend researching. So you got to hear it.
There we go. Looking forward to it.
Alan, you got any last comments?
Just, if you, the quote from your song, Radio On, if you got to go, baby, go out strong. Here's your chance to go out with a song. Whatever you want to plug, whatever you want to, just go right ahead.
Well, that was pretty much it.
That was it. We're done.
And,
we are done.
Yeah.
All right.
We apologize for Jimmy having 8 cups of coffee before the interview.
I just did my COVID shot. It kind of reacts the same way. It gives me this hyper.
Speed kills, Jim.
I did my second COVID shot, and I wasn't feeling too good last night. No.
I didn't feel great. I felt fine, except for a bit sore of arm after the first one. But the second one, I felt, almost weird and tingly, like a flu was going to come, but then it didn't come. And then I just kind of felt general malaise for a day. So it goes away. Hey. So
all right.
It's all good.
All right.
It's been a pleasure with the ageless wonder, Lee Aaron herself. So thank you for spending time with us here today on the Metal Voice.
Hey, it was a pleasure talking to you guys and hanging out. You guys take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks very much.
I hope you make it to Montreal soon.
Oh, I hope so.
Yes.
Bye.